about already in the first video, which will be mostly useless now, is that we created a geoprocessing service, which you can see at this location right here. So under Raber and Summarize Elevation, I created this geoprocessing service. In fact, if you click into Summarize Elevation and then click into Execute Task, this is the URL. This URL right here is the URL that you would need to have in order to execute this program on the server. So the program that we created on the server will run.
Dr. Raber?
Yeah.
We can't see the screen.
Oh.
The screen's not turned on.
Yeah. Sorry. I messed up. Control. Oh, this button. All right, can you see it now?
Yes.
You all couldn't see it either. Thanks for telling me.
Well, we thought you said follow along. I wasn't sure.
Oh, okay. All right. So this is the URL right here to the geoprocessing service. So it's the one we've been dealing with, 10.64.78.100 /ArcGIS/REST. That's the endpoint to the REST interface for the server. And then actually /REST/services. And then my directory is Raber. Then the name of the geoprocessing service that I created was Summarize Elevation /GP server /Summarize Elevation /execute. You can get to that by just starting off with this portion and then clicking Raber, Summarize Elevation, and then execute. All right, so this is the URL, and this URL, every time somebody goes to this URL, it's actually going to execute. And you can see when I hit execute task right now, or you can hit it if you want. It's going to take a few seconds, and then this is the result. So it ran on the server and created this result. Okay? Most of the information that's in there isn't what we need. I think what we were most concerned about was this mean here. So we're gonna create a solution that that gets that mean value out of there. Okay. Now, what about what gets submitted? Well, these are the values that get submitted. Okay. You can see on this very complicated URL that it's appended this information. It has to do what we call encode that those values into a URL. In other words, a squiggly bracket is not a valid thing to have in a URL. So that's what all these %7B%, it's the stuff that that can't be put into a URL, encoded, so that when the server gets it, it'll turn it back into this. But this is essentially what the server needs. It needs this information in order to execute. Okay. Needs all that information for the first parameter. There are two parameters. One parameter is the user point. So this is the information it needs for the user point. And this is the information that it needs for the distance. It needs it to say distance, and then the amount of the distance, and then the units. Okay. Look down here and see what the mean is right now. If I adjust any of my parameters, let's say if I go out 500 meters instead of going out 100 meters, and I hit execute again, which is basically just sending this URL off to the server. I hit execute again. You'll notice that, actually, one thing that you should notice is in the URL, somewhere in here, features, attributes. So this is all still the attribute stuff. All still there it is, distance, 500. Where it says distance, 500. So that changed. And then the mean is now 169.50 within the 500 meter radius that we put in. So at a 100 meter radius, the average was 232. And at a 500 meter radius, the average is 169. It looked like. Now we could change the value for the distance right in this little interface that ESRI has set up for us. But we can also change the value right in here. In fact, where'd it go? Meters, units, distance, 500. So let's change this to 700. Hit enter. Notice that it changed over here when I did that. Okay. And then also we get a new mean. Our mean now is 212. So it's changing based on the user inputs. So all we're doing is running that little geoprocessing service that we created, but now we're running it through a web interface. We don't have to run it through the ArcGIS interface. So today what we're going to work on is calling this through our leaflet map. Okay. So what I've done to start that, if you go on to Blackboard, oops, this is the wrong course. If you go into Blackboard for web mapping, yeah, this is still the wrong course. So I'm going to go home, and then I'm going to scroll down, still home, courses maybe. All right, scroll down to web mapping. And if you go under course materials, I've added a new HTML page for today called leaflet gpservice.html. I'm going to download that. I think the best way to do that is to right click and say save link as, and it puts it on your hard drive somewhere. I'll put it in C courses, I think. Is where I'm at. Courses, web mapping, and I'm going to call it leaflet GP service. All right, and I'm gonna open this in. I don't know if I have. Yeah, I've got Notepad++ here. All right, I'm opening it in Notepad++, and all this top part is the same that we've been dealing with in previous courses. This hasn't changed at all. Then down here, this is just creating a map. This hasn't changed in a few weeks either. The only part that's changed is from here down, on map click down to here. This is the new code that I put in there. All right. Actually, it might be best to just get rid of this this code and rebuild it. But if I do that, I delete this, Control S, and then I open this. If I say open with Chrome, you'll see that the only thing I've done is adjust the size of the map and what comes up. This is Forest County. So this is the county that the University of Southern Mississippi's Hattiesburg campus is located in. Hattiesburg is right up here. Okay. The reason why I have it zoomed to Forest County is because I've built a web service that only works in Forest County. So I want the user to click somewhere within Forest County. I should probably put a note up at the top of my code that says something like that. Forest County to get the average elevation. Okay. So now when I refresh the page, I'll have that little note. Okay. All right, now I'm going to show you some things with leaflet, or sorry, not with leaflet, with ESRI leaflet, because we're dealing with some ESRI, an ESRI thing. The service that we created was an ESRI geoprocessing service. Oops, that's the actual leaflet code, the ESRI leaflet code. What I want is the API reference, and you know this API isn't extremely large, okay? But there's a there's one called request. Okay, let's click on that one. Request is a generic method for basically sending and receiving URL data. Okay, by get and post. That's another way to say it's a URL. Get is the most common. Post is less common. We're not really going to cover it in this class. We're technically using get, which just means here's the URL. Go get the information and return it into an object. All right. So this l.esri.request is going to take care of taking this URL and giving it the information. It'll take care of encoding all the data for us. We don't have to worry about turning everything into %7b, %0d, %0a plus. We just have to get our data in this format, which is JSON. This is JSON data. We need to get our data into that format, and once we do, it'll work. It'll turn it into this other format for us. That's what ESRI.request does. Okay. So here is an example of ESRI request in action. So if we copy this, what I did in that earlier code, and paste it into our code, I'm going to indent it a little bit. Okay. This is going to make a request to this. This is going to make a request to this location here. Now, I have no idea where that location is. I don't know what this server does. I should probably see what it's going to do. Okay, it looks like that's it's just a bunch of it looks like it's another map service. I mean, a feature service. So l.request. When this line of code gets executed, it's going to make a request to this URL, and let's see what the other parameters are, because we don't know what the other parameters are. Let's look at what they are. So the other parameters are, after the URL, the other parameters is a parameter called parameters. Okay, what do you suppose might go into there? Remember, we're trying to get our geoprocessing service to run. What would be some of the parameters to our geoprocessing service? In this case, I'm talking about our specific geoprocessing service that I've already created, the one that finds the average elevation. What's, can you all hear me up there? Yeah, it looks like it. Okay, so what's one of the parameters to our specific geoprocessing service? We have two input parameters. So this one right here. What are the two parameters there? That small. 1, 2. Does that make sense that these are the parameters? Those are the inputs. Another way to say that. We're feeding those in. Okay. So in the ESRI request, it's expecting us at this point to to give it the name of the input parameters. In our case, the distance and the location of the point. And then callback is the name of the function to run when the request completes. Okay. In our case, that will be a new function that is going to report to the user what the average elevation was in that area. So that's what that does. So that's the name of the function. The function actually gets passed two arguments, an error and a response. So we need to keep that in mind. And finally, the last parameter that we feed this this ESRI request is a context, and that's optional. We're not going to worry about that right now, but the context, for those of you who are curious, is what becomes the this object. I could say this dot whatever. So I could give it the reference to some element on the page, and then I could always refer to that element on the page as this dot, just for that function. But we're not going to worry about that because we can already access any element on the page. Okay. That's basically for getting really fancy. All right, so here's a summary. Oh, that's cute. Okay. ESRI.request, that's the one we're going to use. Okay. All right, we need to change the URL because we're not going to use this URL. We're going to use our URL, which is this guy. And we don't want anything after the question mark because, like I said, it's going to create all the stuff after the question mark. So copy the URL to your geoprocessing service, in this case, my geoprocessing service, and put it in quotes. It needs to be in quotes. And so now it will be going out to this. It'll be going out to this URL, and when it gets done, it will be either reporting an error or reporting a response. I'm just going to change this to response. Let's see what happens if we'll try to run it right now. Well, if we try to run it right now, oh, I got to put up the developer tools. Okay, this is the message that came out. It says it's executing. It says it started. These are all the messages. What's the last one? It says it succeeded. Right? So right now, it ran already. And if I want to see the results, I could look in this one called results. Results dot the results 0 dot value dot fields or features 0 attributes. There we go. So I have the mean value right now, 232. Okay. That was a pretty tall stack of data that it came from. So let's review that real quick so that we can put that into our code. Because there's a lot of information that came back. So this was the object that came back. It's called object. Okay. So if I say object dot results, I would get this object. Okay. And then that object is an array, so I have to get the first element of that array, looks like. And then I have to say dot value. Then I have to say dot features. Then I have to say 0 again, dot attributes, dot mean. Okay, that's a lot. Let's see if I can get all that. Response dot, what was it, results, 0, dot, so that's results 0 dot value dot features results dot value dot features 0 again, and then attributes, dot attributes, and then dot mean. It has to be capitalized, right? I think this should work. So this is the way to get to just the mean value. And the way that I got that was to follow down this object, because this is just a huge object. It has lots of different parameters. I mean, sorry, lots of different values inside of it. Basically, this just turned all of this information here. See, I'll turned all of this information into words. I mean, sorry, into a different format. So what we did was say results dot, or no, sorry, we said results 0, which is the only one. Results 0 dot what was it? Dot value. Value dot value dot features 0 dot mean. All right, now this should work. Let's see if this works. I refresh the page. Unable to complete operation. Huh. It worked last time. So now it's going into the error. This is actually what I expected it would do before. I was kind of surprised that I got the other message, but let's see what happens. Okay, so it's still working. Okay, so now instead of getting to this part of the code, we're getting to this part of the code, which is actually what I thought would happen. Okay, the reason that I think that it was going to go there is we haven't given it any parameters. And so it's not running it correctly. Let me turn my phone down. Sorry. All right. So we have to give it the parameters that we want it to have. And those parameters, as we've reviewed now a few times, are these two values. We need to give it user point, and we need to give it distance, value, or field. Okay. Those are the values that we need to pass into it. All right. If you go back one screen to just without execute, you'll be able to see what name the parameter names are that it expects. So I'm going to delete all this stuff. Actually, it might be easier just to go like this, or summarize elevation. So here are the two parameters that it needs. It needs user point, and it's called user point, and it needs distance or value field, and it's really kind of convoluted the way that it looks. But we could have changed this when we set up our service, but I wasn't careful enough, and I created. So this is the name of the parameter, which we could still use. At this point, it's easier than going back. So let's copy these two parameter names over here. Okay. So I've got my parameter name, user point, and I've got my parameter name, distance, underscore value, underscore, or sorry, or underscore field underscore. So I've got those two values. Okay. So these are the two parameters that need to go in there. Okay. Now, distance or value field is the name of one of the parameters. So don't know why that keeps coming up. Maybe let's turn my volume down. There we go. All right. Distance and our value field is the name of one of the parameters. And for now, I'm just going to give it the default value, which is this value right here. I'm going to copy that and paste it into here. So now I have the distance or value field, and I also want to give it the user point. Technically, both of the names of these parameters should be in quotes, although most versions of most web browsers don't care. So, but I am going to put them in quotes because technically they should be in quotes. I'm going to put user point in quotes as well. Okay. All right. Now with user point, again, I'm just going to give it the current value of user point, which is all this stuff. Okay. I wish it was smaller. That way it'd all fit on one screen, but it's not. Let me indent it so it looks a little more pretty. I'm going to indent this. Yep. Okay. I'm going to delete this word user point. All right. So maybe another thing I should do is do this. So make it a little bit easier to read, and then all this tab. There we go. This was one line in. This is all formatting, not necessary if you don't want to. Okay. All right. So the reason why I formatted that is to give you the idea here that it's basically, this is, between the squiggly brackets is an object. And this object has two values in it. It has distance. These are called attributes, two attributes, distance underscore value or field and user point. Has two of those. Distance or value or field is also a object, and it has two attributes in it. Same with user point. It's an object, but it has a bunch of attributes in it. Okay, and these are all the default values. So now what I'm going to do with this whole thing is set it equal to something like, I'm going to just call it params. The params is equal to all that. It's basically equal to this thing. And now it should work if I just take this and feed it into the parameters. So this is, now when I run it, it's going to get that value. The value of all that text that I just typed in. And it should give me a response if the internet, I think the internet's having some hiccups. Am I even connected to the internet anymore? Whoops. Oops. I already have that open. Yeah. Okay, so it's now returning this value here. and I get my results again. I don't know why it had that issue there for a second. So there's the object, there's the results, there's the value. Now I can uncomment out this other line here, and instead of getting the entire response, I'm just going to get the mean value. So there's the mean. Refresh again, I get the mean, so on. And if I change, like let's change the user point, or the user point parameter. So if I go 300 meters away, I refresh it again, I'm going to get a different value. Now I got 215. Whereas if I go another 200 meters away, I'll get yet another value again. So I can modify these parameters just through my code. Here I can change this to 400, run it again, and I get a different value. Okay. All right. So what's left? Well, what's left is for a user click to make this code run rather than it just being run on startup. Because right now it just runs on startup. It doesn't run on a user click. And I actually want the user click to cause this to happen, so that this value will change dependent on where I click. Okay. So to do that, I need to do a few things. One thing I need to do is add this thing that now we've dealt with a few times, map.on, click, and then you give it the name of a function. And so here's our console.log. So now when I refresh this, anytime I click, it's telling me where I clicked. Okay. So that's a simple event. What I want to do is actually run all of this stuff whenever I click, rather than the way I have it set up. So what I can do is put all of this in a function. Right now, this is all outside of a function. But if I simply go up here and type the name of a function, let's call this find elevation. And then still going to give it that elevation, the user click point. Oh, I have to say find elevation equals a function, and then I go down here and close that up. Now I've created this function. To make things look a little bit better, I'll indent this portion of the code. And the name of my function is find elevation. So what I can do is, instead of saying function, I just say find elevation. So now when I click on the map, it's going to run this code. And it's not going to run it when the page just starts up. Refresh to show that. So now you'll notice that I get an error. We can probably solve that. 51. Oh, should be like this. Sorry. Syntax error. Okay. A refresh. Now when I click anywhere, it executes. The problem is that I always get 209 down here. No matter where I click, I get the value 209. Why is that? Why isn't that value changing? Right. Right. None of these values change. The distance doesn't change. The geometry location doesn't change. So every time we click, we're feeding it the exact same information. And so you wouldn't expect it to give us any different result. Okay, that's exactly right. So right up to this point, we've gotten the code to respond to the click, but we need to do something to actually get that click into this part of the code so that it puts it in that location, okay? Or runs it for that location. That's what we need to do. Now, the words may be slightly different, but this is, I've just basically gotten you back to exactly where the code that came down from what do you call this thing? Blackboard is. So this code right here, leaflet GP service, if you download it, it does the same thing that this does, but there's a few slight differences, like it doesn't have the text at the top that I added. All right, so we want to change this value based on where the user's been clicking. And so what I want to do first is log this this event, the E here. We could call this like a click event. I mean, this is just the variable name. I just always call my events E because it's easy. So we could do that. Refresh. We're gonna get everywhere we click. We're gonna get this information. So this is coming from the end result. This is coming from the click. Okay. Let's expand this object to see if it has some information we want. And in fact, it probably does. It's got that lat long. Okay. So we've practiced this before. We've got our lat long right here. So it's lat long dot lat and dot lng should get us that information. So instead of logging the raw click event, let's log lat long dot lat and let's log the other thing. LNG. So now it's going to log that value. We'll click on the map. So that's our which one's which? That's our latitude, this is our longitude, and this is the value that we're trying to get to change based on where we clicked. Latitude, longitude. All right. Now, what if we just plugged those values in to this? Would it work? Well, do these values look like latitudes and longitudes? No, they look kind of like latitudes and longitudes in that there's two of them, and actually the numbers kind of match up, but this is in Web Mercator. All right. Now, one thing that we could do is attempt to see if we could pass this by changing the spatial reference, just past the latitude and longitude. And I didn't think about this, but I'm going to try that first. Leaflet does provide a very simple method for converting between latitude, longitude, and Web Mercator. So if this doesn't work, what I'm about to do, we'll just use the Web Mercator method. But I'm going to try this first. So I'm going to go 4, 3, 2, 6, and this is basically going to hopefully have the server handle the projection change rather than me handle the projection change. Okay, it might not work. A latitude or longitude, which one is X? Yeah, latitude should be, this goes this way, right? The longitude goes left to right, right?
Oh, well, yeah, here, like, give it like that.
Yeah. Longitude is X. And latitude is Y. It's reversed from the way we say it, which always makes me confused, so I have to think about it. I don't know if this will work to use the raw latitude longitude files, but we'll see. So now what's happening is instead of feeding the raw data, or instead of feeding those hard-coded numbers, we're going to feed special numbers. And in fact, and it looks like it works. So this is it's probably a better way to do it. Next week we can cover the other way to do it. But now you see how when I click, I'm getting different values. I'm getting the elevation. So I could actually change this so that it says something like this. And then down here, I could just say mean elevation. And then try to run this again. So now it's just, I'm just making it look prettier. I gotta add a plus here. Plus to concatenate this, the values. 102, I must have made the same. Oh. What did I mess up on? Oh, there we go. I put the quote in the wrong place. All right. So I get latitude, longitude, mean elevation. Latitude, longitude, mean elevation. See that? Right. Yep, exactly. So right now, what is the distance that I'm using? It's still 100, exactly. Okay. So yeah, you would want to report something like, mean elevation. What might be even more cool is to actually use Leaflet to put a circle for the mean elevation that you'd selected. So you put a little dot and say the mean elevation within the circle is something, and you could do that right through right through Leaflet. Yeah. All right. So let's go to the Leaflet. Yes. Docs. So under projection here, this is, and we'll actually put this into practice next week because the open source server won't do this projection for us. But here we've got three projections: spherical Mercator, and lat long. So we can switch between these different projections easily in there's a point to lat long to point. So these are functions that we can use rather than using. What we did was we basically said, okay, here's our point in latitude and longitude, and we're giving it to you in latitude and longitude. ESRI is smart enough to, on the server, convert that over and process it in the projection that it needs to process it in order to return that information back. Yeah, and this hopefully this is working as well in that case. All right, so let's save this. So your assignment is, I don't know if you heard, did you all hear the question down here? Like, wouldn't you want to change, or maybe was it more of a statement, but wouldn't you want to be able to, I guess that's still a statement, my question, but anyway, you want to be able to report to the user, or even I'll take that a step further, wouldn't you want the user to be able to even specify what that distance is, what the distance of the click is? So what I want you to do is to modify this example. I'll go ahead and upload it right now. I'll call this something. File, save as. We'll call it Leaflet GP service AC for after class. and then I'll upload it. This way I won't even get distracted. Edit, upload. Oh yeah, edit. Okay, where to put it? CWM, no courses, WM. There we go. So now this example is uploaded. So I admit that this is probably I actually probably think this is one of the more complicated examples that we've gone through, and that's because we're using this large JSON object. And it's really all this is a large JSON object, and the potential for getting a quote out of place or a squiggly bracket out of place does exist, but for the most part, it's copied and pasted. And so what I want you to do for this one is you don't have to consume your own geoprocessing service unless you want to. If you want to create your own geoprocessing service and consume it, that's fine. The server should work now. But if you want to just use this one, well, in fact, you have to use this one for the assignment. The assignment is to allow the user to modify that distance so they can choose whatever distance they want. And then the second part of the assignment is to report the value that's coming back to the user on the web page rather than inside the console. Because right now they don't see anything unless they have the console open. So that's not really acceptable. So for this one, you have to do those two things. Report it somewhere on the screen. You don't have to get fancy. You can just report it in some divs that you attach to the page somewhere, and then actually let them in an HTML form, in an input form. You need to gather the size that they want the box and the circle, and dynamically change that. Anybody have any questions about the assignment there? All right. Okay, I'm gonna end class a little early. I mean, not end, but I'll be around here. But I know that the students down here want to ask me some questions. So I'll be around. Like if you want to talk to me through this, or I'll also be around tomorrow if you want to talk to me in person. But that's all I have for today. Next week we will we'll use a database, and we'll make our database be able to talk to us through the internet, a spatial database. So we'll be able to ask the spatial database questions about the data that's in it. How many of y'all have taken the spatial database class that Dr. Carr teaches? Just one? Okay. I won't assume any prior knowledge. I mean, I'll probably say, hey, this is a spatial database and this is how it works, and I've built an interface to it. It's really easy to make an interface to it, but as far as setting the whole database up, that's a entire class on its own, and we won't do that. But we'll have a little bit of background. We will have 3 lectures to talk about it. All right. That's the end. So unless you have questions, you're free to go. And I'll see you all up there on Tuesday. What's that? Okay. Anybody? The last person to leave, I'd appreciate it if you turn off the projector. They always yell at me if I forget to turn off the projector. But you don't have to turn anything else off, but the projector bulb is the most Well, it wears out the quickest. Thank you. So do you just hang out in here all day, pretty much?
Yeah.
Where's Carter's office now? Is he in it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just give me a second to go see if Dr. Carter's over here. Cool.
Yeah. 25th. I think that you're able to just down Dr. Carter about actually wanted to ask a question.
We really don't.
Uh,
We literally posted everything. So, just let them know that we've done.
you sure you don't have any questions?
I mean, for the most part, we were able to update, like, we can post stuff now, so we have it up.
Okay.
And for this lecture, we have the stuff, it's just I have to figure out how to give it here to make it possible to show the stuff. So for the most part, I understand. Yeah, it's just he went a little fast on his session, so I couldn't actually do it while he was doing it, but he already posted it, so I guess I don't have any questions. Okay. Oh, and see you later.